there anything, Mr. Daly, that the board could help with or provide to you?
I think we're doing really well down here. Just keep us in mind, you know, down here, we're at the south end of the district. If you have a chance to come down and you'd like to see the school with students, please let me know and we can arrange that so you can be here. We have community events here. Like right now, our school is being used by other community entities. EWC has volleyball games going on right now. If you want to come participate in any STEM activities, please feel free. We have Awana on Wednesdays. A lot of people come down to that and drive to our community for that on Wednesdays. So that's great. There'll be different things that you'll see in the announcements, like when we have different reading activities or things. If you'd like to join in that, please feel free. And if you have questions, just ask me. So, any other questions?
Do you have your own calendar?
Yes, we do. It's on our website as well. And on the website is the LaGrange Longhorn store, you know, so if you want to get any merchandise, please feel free. A lot of people, there's a lot of alumni on the walls, and people said, I had an aunt or an uncle that go here. Do you have any old uniforms? Sorry, no, they were dry rotting and I threw them all away. But we do have a store where you can purchase anything you like with the LaGrange Longhorn site. And 10% of the proceeds go to the school. So please get on our website. It's just an attachment on the district website and look around. Yeah, but you're welcome anytime. Just let me know so that we can have somebody here to walk around with you. Any other questions?
Very well done, Mr. Daly.
All right. Thank you guys for coming out.
Our next presentation will be by Human Resources Director Holly Lara on district staff retention data and comparability. This question was asked during the last meeting, and so we appreciate Ms. Lara for presenting.
Yes, ma'am. In this exit interview, we have, I was just glancing through it real quick. These are some very specific answers. Are these a composite of?
They
the-
are,
Okay,
what I present is a composite of all employees. You'll notice in the first paragraph, I provided the number. We had 25% of our respondents were certified.
I'm sorry, one last thing about the, here, this graphic on the front. Do we, and so these numbers are just for this specific time that this was sent out. Have we done this in the past, and can we see a trend, or do we have a trend line that we can look at and see how these numbers compare?
Something
Ms. Laura, how many teachers are in the district approximately?
we have 100.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. I can say from sitting on the board, just the short time I've been on, it does feel like sometimes it's a mass exodus, right? Because on the board, we're seeing the retirements or the resignations. So I appreciate the question of the board to Ms. Laura, and I appreciate the presentation. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is the public comments. In all fairness to those who have not ever attended a school board meeting, there's a 5-minute time limit. If you have a topic that you'd like to speak on to the board, you're more than welcome to fill out one of these yellow sheets and hand it in, if that's something you're interested in. Any takers? All right. With that, oh, I'm sorry. Yep, I've got yours, Mr. Hanson. Just wanted to open the floor for anybody else that didn't have an opportunity or didn't know about the yellow sheets. Okay, all right. With that, Mr. Hanson, if you'd like to come to the podium, there's a 5-minute time limit. Legal restrictions limit the amount of board comment and interaction during the portion of this meeting. So go ahead, the floor is yours. All right, with that, we will move on to the consent agenda. So under the consent agenda, we have approving minutes of the December 10, 2024 regular board meeting, approving monthly bills, approving a district monthly fiscal statement and fund balance comparison report, and approving a request for exception to district policy 5147, which is field trips to allow Southeast Elementary 5th grade students to travel to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. I'm sorry? Would the board like to pull any of these consent agendas?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull 5.2 and 5.3, please.
Any others?
I'd like to pull 5.4.
Any others? With that, then I'm just going to ask for a motion on each singular, given that 3 out of the 4 of the consent agenda have been pulled. So in 5.1, approving minutes of the December 10, 2024 regular board meeting, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of December 10, 2024 regular board meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. I would remind the board as well that we have these fancy little screens, so if you could vote via that, that would be helpful. I'll try to remember as well. All right, with 5.2, approve monthly bills as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, yes, there is. I just have a question because there is an issue that has come up in the community about how we are taking advantage of using local businesses for some of our products. And I thought that was a discussion worth having. Specifically, there was a local business that is downsizing significantly. And one of the things that was mentioned in the community by some members of the community was that the district was not taking advantage of purchasing locally like we should be. And going through the monthly bills, I see that that's not necessarily the case, that we actually are using local businesses for some things. So could we maybe get a quick breakdown of how we decide to purchase locally and not? I mean, obviously availability would be the number one issue, but are there other considerations when we're making local purchases versus going to outside vendors?
Madam Chair, I can speak to that briefly.
Thank you.
There was, in the particular, instance that trustee Goulart is speaking to, there was a statement made that, schools were encouraged to shop locally, and then if it couldn't be, received locally, then to go out to other vendors and other options. And that is the directive that is made to the schools. What does happen in our purchasing procedures allow the school principals to approve up to $1,500. Anything over between $1,500 and $5,000, and this is policy, is approved by Mr. Kramer, and then anything over $5,000 comes before the board. So schools are encouraged, and I do look at those as to when purchases are made, both purchase orders being requests for purchase, as well as items that are already purchased. I do not go back to the school and say, you know, did you seek out a local vendor for this item? The one in particular that was mentioned, and I think it's very important for you to recognize is, and I'll just share Amazon. We often think of Amazon and we think of supplies being pencils, paper, staples, that kind of thing. We do use Amazon, but we use Amazon for a very broad spectrum. Some of those large items that you see to Amazon could be things for the maintenance department. That there are things that our maintenance staff cannot purchase anywhere else. There, you know, there could be motors or toilet repair kits, or, you know, some of those kind of things that it's important to recognize that it's not just office supplies. So having shared that, I'd be happy to field any questions or share any other information requested.
Any further discussion?
I think probably what we're really trying to do is make sure the community knows that we are shopping locally as much as possible. And then we want to assure them of that. Is I think the big question here.
And that actually was the point, because like I said, we actually do, we're the kind of nerds that way. We sit down and go through the monthly bills, and there's a lot of them, and we get to see the names of the businesses that are being used. And so I did want to mention that, yes, we are, there's a long list of local businesses that we're using. So,
We just want to assure.
Yeah.
that
Yep.
We are doing our best to do that.
I can assure you that my conversation with the schools is a reminder of the fact that those local vendors and merchants are the ones supporting us when we're, you know, requesting donations for after prom or that type of thing. You can't go to Amazon and request a donation. So that is always a conversation and something that staff and administration are reminded of.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the monthly bills as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. 5.3, approve the district monthly fiscal statement and fund balance comparison report. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Do we have any discussion?
Hi, it's me again. Have a question on page 38. Clear down at the very bottom, fund transfer. What is the purpose of that? And I see some of it's gone out of that fund. Where did that go?
Madam Chair, members of the board, that fund transfer in the budget is actually a fund transfer to food service. And it's specifically stated as such when the board approved the budget. When the designation of being a CEP district and providing free meals to all students, the conversation was such that the anticipation was that $350,000 could be needed in order to provide those meals. At this point in time, $100,000 has been transferred from general fund to food service. And where we're at today, I do anticipate that it could reach $350,000. That's what the district is not receiving by not charging parents.
How soon are we going to deplete that? Would you estimate? Will we make it through the school year?
Yes, I really believe that we will not exceed 350,000.
And the other question I have on this one is on page 39. Could you give us just a high-speed pass on how to understand this page and what's in parentheses and why, and some of the vast differences in what was in the funds in 23 versus the significantly less amounts in some of those funds in 24?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the fund balance comparison is provided for you twofold. Primarily, it's there so that you have a comfort level in being able to approve the items in contracts through new business, as well as approving the bills and showing you that we have the funds available to do that. This report is a month delayed, and it's a month delayed based upon me not having bank statements in time in order to have them reconciled in part of the board packet that goes out the Thursday prior to the board meeting. Each of these funds are the funds that the district budgets and that we hold money in. The top one, the general fund, that being the main operating account of the district. And that's where when you see the report on page 38, the review of revenues and expenses, that review of revenues and expenses is directly tied to the general fund. That shows you that we have an additional $2 million as of November 24 compared to November of 23. The capital construction account is the account that we receive funds in reimbursement from the state school facilities department. And that one is short based upon reimbursement requests being out to the school facilities department for the demo projects that we did this summer. The major maintenance fund is the fund where we receive money from the state strictly for repair and maintenance as approved by the school facilities department. We receive funds quarterly from the school facilities department, and that account has grown by $1.5 million. But that is because we have not had any large projects in the, very recent vicinity. Those large projects could be a roof, could be a boiler. When we talk with the building and grounds, there are some large projects coming up between HVAC and different things like that. And we've been fortunate to be able to maintain that 10.6 million. Madam Chair did point to Matt and mention the kitchen project will be funded out of that. Tonight, you're asked to approve contracting with Benzel Pest for a project at Lingle. And when it states coming out of major maintenance, that's at Fund 12. The special revenue fund is our grants fund, and that did have some funds there based upon a grant that we had for mental health that we received the funds up front. That's very rare, but we because of receiving the funds up front in 23, we had funds that we hadn't yet expended. The rec fund is the pass-through for the rec board to award their projects. And when you look at those 2 years, it's relatively close, but that's based upon the timing of awardees requesting their funds. The lunch fund, we don't have the money from parents. In the past, parents might provide money for a month or a couple months in advance. So that's what that one is. Activity fund is the student fundraisers. That one really is money in, money out. And BOCES is the higher education mill levy with Eastern Wyoming College.
So on the being reimbursed by the state and the capital construction, so we're still anticipating that we are going to be reimbursed. We're just waiting for it to work its way through the red tape.
Yep. It's a function of them being short-staffed and us getting the money from them.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Ms. Cates. That was an extensive response and I appreciate it. All right. All those in favor of approving the district monthly fiscal statement and fund balance comparison report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 5.4. Approve request for exception to district policy 5147, the field trips to allow Southeast Elementary fifth grade students to travel to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science on Thursday, March 27, 2025, exceeding the recommended travel times and out-of-state travel. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think this is an excellent opportunity for the students to be able to go do this. I just ask one thing, is when they return, and I don't know if Ms. Jolovich is here or not, but I see Mr. Williams snuck in back there. But I was wondering if we could get those students, when they return from that field trip, to just write a paragraph or what they liked most about that field trip and what stood out to them that they found so exciting or informative or whatever, and bring it to the board or make a time where we come out and let them read it to us or something like that.
That'd be great.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. All right, old business. 6.1, consider approval of proposed revisions to district policy 5131. Oh, did I skip something?
We're on the election of vice chairman.
Oh, I don't have the revised, I don't have the amended. All right, sorry about that. Mine doesn't have that. All right, old business. We're going to start off with the election of the vice chair. And just to provide a little bit of an explanation, so we did vote for officers during our December meeting, but there was some confusion and misunderstanding as to voting and how that all worked, pertaining particularly to the vice chair position. And so I think that from a legal standpoint, reading the statutory language and so forth, I think that we were in the clear, but just out of goodwill, I think we need to redo it just to make sure we're all on the same page. So may I have a nomination for vice chair?
I would move to nominate Sarah Chairs for vice chair.
Thank you. Any other nominations? May I have a motion to approve Sarah Chairs as the vice chair? May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I do think we should put into the, meeting notes that we had to do this because we are required to have a 5 vote, as a majority of the board. We only had a 4. And so therefore we were required by not only our governance rules, but by state statute 21-3-105, that we really need to do this. So make it meet all the legal. So.
So trustee Alexander, I respectfully disagree in the fact that the official action under the statute was the board making a motion and approving Ms. Chairs as the vice chair at the time, and then unanimously approving that. But I understand what you're saying with the 4-1-3 vote. I just don't think it's necessary to put in the minutes because it was not a legal issue. We have consulted with our legal counsel. But if the board has a strong feeling one way or the other, I don't think it's a big deal to note it in the minutes. I'm sorry, could you,
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
thank you.
If it's not a legal issue, why are we redoing this?
Out of goodwill, because I do think that there was some misunderstanding and some confusion around it. I mean, I was there, it was very confusing trying to keep track of who was voting for one. We were voting for multiple people at a time. So I do think that it was confusing, and I think that it's just a better way to go about it. I want the board to be supportive and confident in who is chosen as the officers. Ms. Chairs obviously does a fantastic job as the vice chair. I just would like the board to stand behind that. Any further discussion?
I don't think any of us are having a question about Sarah, where I believe we're probably all going to vote for her. But I still don't understand why we're doing a revote if there wasn't an issue at the beginning, because the confusion is not necessarily a reason to do a revote. If it passed and it was legal, then I don't see any reason but we're doing a revote.
It's within the board chair's discretion, and that's one thing we checked with legal counsel as well. And so it was my decision to redo it because I do feel like there was misunderstanding and confusion.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving trustee Chairs as the vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. All right, now 6.2, I guess now it's going to be renumbered. Consider approval of proposed revisions to District Policy 5131.25, Student Threats of Violence. And I understand that after the last meeting, when this was asked to be kicked back down to the policy committee has had an opportunity to meet and discuss. And there were, is it 2 board members at least that were present for the policy committee? So may I have a motion?
So moves.
Is there a second? Any further discussion, or would the board members that were present for the committee meeting like to discuss how that discussion went?
On page
5, under number 4, at the policy committee, we had agreed to remove the words "or." There's 2 of those in that section, and they have remained in this policy. And at the policy committee, we did agree to remove those.
And you said the word or, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's and/or law enforcement and/or Title 19 coordinator, and we agreed to remove the word "or."
And so it would read law enforcement and title.
Title
19?
19 coordinator, if applicable, was added. And so we did that twice in that paragraph.
Who keeps track of those revisions? Lorraine.
And I believe it's because we had the if applicable piece. I think that,
Is why you left the and or.
right.
Well, that means we may not have to keep,
That's okay. Go ahead, trustee Alexander.
we would not have to. Would notify law enforcement if it was or only. I mean, it says and or, so we could just notify Title IX coordinator, not involve law enforcement at all. Where if we put and law enforcement is notified and Title IX coordinator if applicable. That way law enforcement is always notified.
Mr. Gilchrist, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you were present for this committee meeting. Do you have an independent recollection of how that played out?
I think,
Okay.
conversation.
And trustee Sharp, that's consistent with what you're
Yes.
saying. Okay.
I agree with that also.
All right. And so with that, can we amend, whomever made the initial motion, can we amend the motion to state that we can approve proposed revisions to District Policy 5131.25 with the revision that was mentioned by trustee Sharp?
Can I make a motion?
I move to adopt this policy with the amendment to remove or from section 4.
All right, can we get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Thank you for that catch, trustee Sharp. All those in favor of approving the proposed revisions to this particular district policy 5131.25 with the revisions as discussed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next is discussion of leadership governance item 2.3. I believe that this is also a subject that had been discussed during the last meeting and was asked to be reworked a little bit by Superintendent Kramer. And I understand that, Mr. Kramer, you have done so.
That is correct.
Do we have a motion to approve the leadership governance item as revised? Do we have a second? Any discussion? No discussion? Oh,
Yes. Madam Chair,
that's all right.
I've been doing a lot of reading on this and
When we go to do this, we need to identify not only how it's going to affect us as a group of trustees, but what it's going to affect the trustees in the future. And it's not just about us, it's about our future trustees as well. And how it's going to affect our public. Should this come a time when we would move to where there is the majority of people on Zoom in the trustee department as the board and very few people in a physical location? Will our public be allowed to come in on Zoom as well? We do have an obligation to follow the public, let's see, I gotta find the wording. Public Meetings Act, I believe it is. And I know that at, I believe Kelly and I both participated in one of the Zooms. And they said this was definitely an option that we could do, but that we needed to be very careful and follow that Public Meetings Act so that we didn't get ourselves into trouble. And so I think we all would prefer not to get into any kind of trouble. So I would like to make sure that we have taken a good look at that Public Meeting Act and ensure that this is going to work for us now as well as the board in the future and what it could look like. We have to have some way to make sure that we are assuring a quorum at all time, whether the quorum is physical or electronic. Because should two people drop off on the electronic, we could end up without a quorum. And at that point, where are we at? So we need to have, I think, a little more meat in the policy to address those issues so that we don't get ourselves in a problem down the road. Because did we lose our quorum in the middle of that, we could end up with a problem in anything that we passed. So those are things that I have concerns about. And I think that we need to just put a little more effort into this policy. I'm not opposed to this Zoom thing, okay? I'm not gonna say I'm opposed, but I think we need to do it right and put the effort in and make sure that it's gonna work for everybody. But I know we need to address how our public's gonna work with this as well.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I also believe that we have other things to look at as well, you know, like if it's not the first time that we would be having a meeting and you all of a sudden need to go into executive session. And how does that person included going into an executive session? And if we allowed them in via Zoom in that, and is that a secure connection with them being in an executive session as such? So, and same with voting and things. If you're online and you lose connection, you're halfway through a meeting, you voted on 2 things and there's 3 more to go. Does your previous votes count? Since you're not there for the rest of the meeting, or how that would work as well?
Yeah,
I just got a question for trustee Bounder or, you guys are here. Yeah,
Any suggestions on or ideas on what else you'd like to add? I mean, just off the top of my head, it's either, I mean, you're either present at the meeting or you're on Zoom. I don't know what else we could, what other options would we have?
And some people come in on phone, which is not a Zoom.
Well, it's still
Yeah,
electronic. You know what I'm saying? It's either
but-
Zoom or on phone
But
or
you
in
can lose
person.
connections. But I guess what I know that from what I understand at the meeting that Kelly and I attended, there are districts that are using this. And I think that we need to reach out and see what some of those other districts are doing and how they have written their things. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are people doing it. There are school boards doing it. So I think it behooves us to get some literature and take a look and see what's going on out there in the state of Wyoming or neighboring states, whatever, and see what we can do to make this work and actually be a viable
Trustee
process.
Chairs?
Madam Chair, I'm the chairs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there has been quite a bit of research done as to what other districts are doing. Have you had the opportunity to talk to our district attorney about this policy and gotten his thoughts on how it is currently stated?
Yes, ma'am. So there has been a lot of time and effort that has gone into this discussion, and a lot of research. So we did a bunch of research with Bighorn County. They've got a fantastic website. They talk a lot about public participation at board meetings, Zoom meetings, like kind of how to do that. So to try and make sure I address every one of your points, for public participation, the Public Meetings Act, as I understand it, requires that the public be present for all of the opinions that are discussed, the motions and the vote, and then the ultimate outcome. And that's what the Public Meetings Act requires. It does not require that any participation via Zoom be provided. As far as executive session, the way that you would handle that is we would have a secure link. So we would, if you're on Zoom and we needed to go into executive, you would get off of that link and go into a secure executive session link. I know in boards that I represent, that's what we do, and it is very secure. I feel very confident in that. If we were to lose a connection or somebody dropped off and we didn't have a quorum, we would have to stop the meeting. Just like if board members or a few board members would get up and leave, we would do that. Votes count. Would their votes count? Yes, their votes would count as long as the Public Meetings Act requires, as long as the board member participates in the discussion, hears all of the opinions back and forth, participates in the vote, then that vote would count. So absolutely. Did I miss any others, Trustee Alexander or Trustee Sharp? I was trying to write them down as fast as you guys said them.
Madam Chair, I think it sounds like you've done your homework. I think what it is the rest of us didn't get to hear about it.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think it needs to be, those things need to be addressed in the policy. So
So-
that it's spelled out. as to how to
Absolutely. I understand that
And
concern.
so that's where I'm at is I don't feel that I can support this policy as it is amended because that information has not been included in the policy.
So there's a trick with developing policies to not over policy the policy, right?
Well, I understand.
And the point of, just so the public understands, the whole point of us looking to revise this particular policy was sometimes it's a lot to get to all of these meetings and sometimes it's difficult. And so we were trying to afford the opportunity to the board members to make sure that there was full participation to allow them to appear by Zoom if needed. There were a couple meetings last summer that I attended sitting in a parking lot of a baseball game, right? Because we were out of state or what have you. So I'm just trying to really encourage that. We are all individuals, professionals. We're here to, do the best thing we can for the school district as a whole. And sometimes it can just be very difficult to attend those meetings. So if anybody has any further questions about like Bighorn County and how they do it or other counties do it, happy to discuss that. Have ran it by our legal counsel. He and I have discussed the Public Meetings Act, which I'm also familiar with. And I feel confident with how the revisions are now written, but would also entertain any further discussion. But I think Superintendent Kramer, did you have something to add?
There was just one of the questions that I was going to address, but you had already addressed that question. So
Okay.
all of mine have been stated.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Madam
Trustee Goulart.
Chair, just a suggestion, we could solve one problem immediately, and that's the concern about losing a quorum. We could, and without objection to using Zoom as a tool, we could just make sure that we don't rely on Zoom to establish the quorum. Then it's a non-issue if we lose connection.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And I believe we
Trustee
discussed this a little bit at the last meeting. I would argue that if my vote doesn't count towards quorum, I'm not going to Zoom in. I mean, I'll watch it on YouTube later to make sure I didn't miss out what's going on in the meeting, but I'm not going to take the time. I mean, if I couldn't make the meeting in person because something was going on, I'm not going to take the time to Zoom in if my vote doesn't count towards quorum, if that makes sense. So
The vote would count.
what were you saying then?
Just to have the quorum number required.
So you have to have quorum in person.
Correct.
Okay,
Not rely on
Okay.
the additional.
but the vote would still count via
Yes,
Zoom.
ma'am.
Okay.
And I think that that's the goal, that's what we want and that's what we would encourage each other to do. My concern is, so if we don't have a quorum, then we cannot further the district's business. And I don't want that to be held up if we're able to attend by Zoom. Obviously, we encourage everybody to be in person. It's so much more effective. This is more just a like, if you can't make the meeting, we prefer that you attend by Zoom. Any further discussion? All right, I believe we have a motion on the table. And the motion is to approve the leadership governance item 2.3 as revised. All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Did everyone vote on the screen? Any abstain? From my review of the votes, the motion passes. All right. On to new business. Am I still on track?
I think so.
Okay. Consider acceptance of certified staff resignations submitted for Mr. Koski. Do we have a motion?
So moved?
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the resignation of Mr. Koski, the Southeast Junior Senior High School halftime business teacher, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 7.2, appoint Goshen County Recreation Board members for 2025. So at the last meeting, I reviewed the existing board member positions and selected replacement board members at the December 2024 meeting. And community representation will remain the same. The proposed amendments and rotations for 2025 are as follows. Dylan Hager, first year of a 5-year term that expires in December of 2029. Kyle Neiswanger, second year of a 5-year term, expires in December 2028. Wade Brew, third year of a 5-year term, expired in 2027. Wade Phipps, fourth year of a 5-year term, expires in December of 2026. Lena Moeller, fifth year of a 5-year term, expires in December of 2025. Do I have a motion to approve these member appointments and rotation of the 2025 Goshen County Recreation Board? Do we have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the member appointments as I have stated for the 2025 Goshen County Recreation Board signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 7.3, consider approval of purchase exceeding $5,000. This is to approve the purchase of a 3-door freezer for Lincoln Elementary from the Webstront store in the total amount of $8,316. This will be funded by the WDE USDA Equipment Assistance Grant. Do I have a motion?
I so moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the purchase of a 3-door freezer for Lincoln Elementary in the amount of $8,316, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. 7.4, approval of contracting for pest control. This is to approve contracting with Benzel Pest Control for installation of netting and structural deterrents to prevent bird nesting in the LFL Schools bus barn in the amount of $27,648 in the Major Maintenance Fund. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question on that.
Trustee Alexander.
Madam Chair, do we have a class in Lingo Fort Laramie that is like a shop class or something like that, where the kids could possibly do that and have a project that they could get graded on and fix a problem, use their imagination of what they can do to correct that?
Mr. Gilchrist, do you mind taking the podium?
I could probably jump.
But I have questions for him too over this, so we could talk about, you go ahead and answer Trustee Alexander's question.
I would highly advise, based on the fact that this is in rafters on a, on top of a bus barn, that, yes, the
My
light.
first words are gonna be safety. I would
Yeah.
not want to put my students in that position, certainly, in that circumstance. I appreciate the sentiment, and they've already come up with some great ideas involving slingshots and some other things. Not the netting, so.
I understand from discussions with Superintendent Kramer that the damage actually is pretty bad and that it can cause rust and so forth, damage to the school buses, which in and of itself is a much larger
And it is
expense.
significant. I came home from an admin meeting and my buses were pulling around, and I was wondering when we got the cool white stripe graphics on our buses, and as I got closer, that was provided by our local pigeons. And it's nasty and it's a horrible sight, but yes, it is causing damage. You can see the paint already deteriorating in the striped areas. I mean, it's very strategic to the rafters and where they do their business.
I also understand from Mr. Kramer that the buses are inspected twice a year.
Yes, that is correct.
And do you want to expand on that and why it's an
It's a
issue?
pretty extensive inspection process that we have. Whenever you see or drive by the transportation location in Torrington, you'll see all of the buses parked in the parking lot. And they go through and rate each bus. And we know with the pigeon poop and all of those things and everything that goes on, that also causes rust. rust is a rating on those buses. And so anything, even from a chip in a window, our buses and transportation are very well scrutinized, which is appropriate because of the safety factor and all of those things. So it is something that we want to maintain our buses as best we possibly can in all situations. And this is one of those situations where we can put into place a system that will hopefully prevent any further damage to those vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Gilchrist. Any, oh, go ahead.
And just to go with that, we're not just the damage to the rust, we're seeing deterioration in the ceiling around the windows in those areas. It's whatever they're eating is not good for what we got going on. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Mr. Gilchrist.
Madam Chair. I'd also like to elaborate. I was very excited when Benzel Pest had a solution in that they're trained professionals. You know, they deal with pest eradication and that type of thing. When we've tried to come up with different solutions, there are people in the community that see us hindering that population, and Benzel Pest Control is going to do it in a manner that people will be satisfied with. It will be done safely, and we wouldn't be putting students and or staff at harm.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of approving contracting with Benzel Pest Control for netting and structural deterrents to prevent bird nesting at LFL School Bus Barn in the amount of $27,648, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. All right, now would be the time for board members to seek input from each other on timely topics or anything that you'd like to discuss with your fellow board members.
Madam Chair, I just want to express, I've been attending, I know that Trustee Sharp and Trustee Stampy have also been attending the board trainings that are offered by the state School Board Association, and they are excellent. I've been on lots of boards, and I would say that this is probably the best training, some of the best trainings that I've been able to attend. And so I would encourage the other board members to, if you have an opportunity to attend, but also it's nice they're able to record them. And I have meetings at that time, and so I can't attend live. I've been able to watch the recordings, and they really are excellent, and I've learned a lot. So I would just encourage other board members, if you have an opportunity to do that, to listen to those recordings.
I appreciate that, Trustee Steinbach. In fact, Trustee Steinbach shared them with me, and they are very informative. It was good stuff. So I would encourage all of you if you have an opportunity. Any other items to discuss, Trustee Alexander?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was just going to bring up the fact that all of us are on committees, but none of us know what the other one is doing in their committees. And so I was just thinking possibly we could put in our agenda where we have a committee report from everybody else on the committee, so we kind of have an idea of what's going on. I mean, as far as, you know, if we're at the Health and Wellness Committee or whatever, if we had a meeting, we could bring up, or a BOCES meeting, or I have a DAC meeting tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. Things like
Yeah,
that.
you never know what's going on in
I
that meeting.
So I just thought that would be something we should bring up and start doing, where we could keep each other informed and something like that.
I appreciate that, Trustee Alexander. In fact, Trustee Chairs and I have also discussed how do we get these committee reports to the board as a whole? You know, do we do an email summarizing afterwards? Do we do a report during a meeting or what have you? As I'm sure you've all learned, if you've gone to a committee meeting, they're pretty in-depth and pretty informative, and it is great information that the rest of the board should learn. So does the rest of the board have any preferences on how that information should be shared?
Madam Chair, I love the idea of actually sharing it here. in this. I don't think they have to be long reports. I just think,
Thank you.
yes, we can keep it short and sweet. But I think it's a great way to share with each other, plus share with our public what is going on, what else is going on behind the scenes.
Trustee Strampy?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was just gonna say the same thing. I think it would be good for us to just go around and briefly give a report. Enough.
Can we add that to the agenda then? We'll add a section about committee reports. Awesome. Any other topics that the board would like to discuss? Trustee Sharp?
One item, I just wanted to follow up on the power school. I didn't know if there was anything else going on about that breach. It was something that is on my,
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
As you are aware, that we did put out a all call relating to Power School, which is our school information system vendor that provides a location for us for storage for grades, information regarding our students. They did have a data breach that was kind of explained, and this is something that was nationwide. This is not just a Wyoming issue. This is not just a Goshen County issue. It is nationwide. We're still getting information. The Wyoming Department of Education did step in and provide some information on the way they want us to report to them. So what they're doing is asking us to report of any information and then taking next steps from the state side of things. And then also for those individuals, the interesting part is it's just not our students that we currently have either. It is information that would have been shared from previous students that may have graduated and those types of things. The fortunate thing that we did have is we have scrubbed a lot of that information down in recent years. And so it was a good reminder, as Mr. Harberts had referred to in an email earlier. He stated being proactive in some of the personal information that we've redacted from gathering and then putting in that information system protected us a lot and protected our students and staff. There are, though, some of those programs that we have to be very careful because we're always inputting information, utilizing outside vendors and asking our question, does this need to be here? Does it need to remain? The challenge also becomes that it houses information regarding grading and transcripts, and how do we combine that, because there is also a need for maintaining a lot of that over time. And so that balance and review process is pretty in depth. But the biggest thing, even from the email that I sent to board members in regards to this, the Wyoming Department of Education and the state have taken a much bigger role recently in trying to inform as many people as possible also. But we should probably, I believe the next update would be coming, I believe, in the next week, possibly from the state, and also providing some information for those that may have had data breaches where Power School as a company and the responsibility for them and informing people of that data breach and what services that they would provide to those individuals where data was breached. Mr. Harberts, do you have anything to add to that? Marcy, anything to add to that answer right now? Okay. Thank you for asking about that.
Madam Chair, I also have one more.
Okay, go ahead.
On the December meeting that we had, the video, there was a portion that was cut out on the public speaker. And I was wondering if there's any moves to be made to start addressing some of those things, because some of our video has been much better, but there is some cut out sections, and I'm just hoping that we're able to identify those areas and get that fixed.
When you say cut out, like the quality cut out?
Yeah, like everything was good before he spoke. He spoke a few words, and then the next thing you know, you can tell he's speaking, but you can't hear him.
Mm.
And then as soon as the next one comes on, it's fine.
Hmm.
So we've got some problem, some glitch somewhere, and we need to, because if that was to occur at a time when it's a vote or something that is more, we need to identify that and make sure we're getting it fixed.
I don't have concerns about the voting piece because the Public Meetings Act doesn't require that we record it. But I understand what you're saying, like from the public standpoint, and if somebody was attending by Zoom, Mr. Harberts, I'm sure you can take a look at it. We've been getting all this new fancy equipment. He's probably getting it all up and running. Yeah.
And that is the challenge. One of the challenges so the platform we utilize is Zoom for coming in.
Mhm.
Now, what that also then talks to is our YouTube channel.
Mhm.
So you're dealing with two different companies trying to talk to each other at the same time. Actually, tonight, even before the meeting started, Mr. Harberts, and you may have saw him and Pete frantically. We did not have YouTube going at the very beginning. So we put up a chat in the chat comments saying we're having technical difficulties. We're going to try to get it addressed as soon as possible. I believe it was addressed pretty early. I don't know what time Mr. Harberts was able to text me back and let me know that we're up and going. It's a constant trying to address. We try to watch it as much as possible in some of those glitches. And going from out here in LaGrange is a little bit challenging, as Matt can
Twilight
attest
Zone.
to. The connection is not as reliable as it is in some areas of the county, even though we're pretty fortunate to have the technology in so many different portions. But yes, I appreciate you bringing that up, and also appreciate you because then I could address what happened earlier this evening and the fact that it was shortened a bit when you go back to watch it.
Any other topics?
Just one quick thing, Madam Chair.
Sure, Trustee Miller.
Our only public speaker, Mr. Hanson, you had a couple of issues. Please don't leave without speaking with some of us and just giving us some more finer details, because you were very brief. So I'd like to hear some more about your concerns if you're still here. Thank you.
Any other topics? Before we conclude the topics, just one thing I wanted to bring up, just to kind of see what the temperature was with the board. I realized that at the last meeting, we voted to continue with the start time of 7 p.m. of these meetings. I'm wondering if there is any interest in changing the time to a little bit earlier, particularly because we have a new board. We're asking more questions, which is fantastic, and we're engaging in more discussion. But these meetings, like, this is not so bad. This agenda has been pretty short, but some of these meetings are pretty lengthy. And I'm getting old and I get tired easy. And these are important topics that we're discussing. And I don't want to feel like we need to rush through them out of the interest of time. The other piece is, like, Trustee Phipps, thank you so much for traveling all the way out here. I know that was a huge haul for you. But some of us are also doing that every meeting now that we're going to different schools. It makes for late nights in the winter, no less. I know I'm sounding like a whiner, but just wondering if there's any interest. I think it's a lot too for Central, for you guys. These are long days. If we could try to start maybe a little bit early, like even start at 5:30 instead of 7. I don't know if that's even doable for all of you. Can I get some feedback on that?
Madam Chair, I am in full support of that. I would love that. I have 2 small children at home, and I know my husband would also appreciate it. A little bit early. As early as we can go.
Madam Chair, I guess, like reflecting over last 6 or so years that I've been on, I think on average, I mean, I would say probably 3 out of 4 meetings were there either for executive session beforehand, like tonight we're at meet and greet. We have some sort of other business. So I just, at 5:30, I don't know if it might be a touch too early when we have to do, or we could put it on the back end. But we could think about it.
I appreciate that, Trustee Hager. Anybody else have any hardships over it, or Trustee Phipps? You had to come the furthest tonight.
Well, just, I don't know, 7 o'clock, it does kind of seem a little bit late sometimes, but at the same time, sometimes it's hard for people to get off work, do what they need to do, and then get people in the crowd, not just us that want to come to the meeting. So I'm kind of, 5:30, I think would be too early. But I'm still kind of in favor of 7.
We'll chew on it a little bit, and then maybe we'll discuss it at the next meeting to see if that's something we want to take action on. Is that fair? Thank you for the feedback. All right, that's all I think we have for topics. Oh, one more thing. Thank you, Mr. Daly, for hosting us out here. Thank you to everyone that has come. This is not the end of the meeting. This is just, but I really appreciate all the work you're doing out here. You're doing a fantastic job. It's fun to come back out here. Very nostalgic. Just really appreciate all of your hard work and your team's hard work. So thank you. All right, Mr. Kramer.
Nope, I was just
Okay.
where you were at.
I don't remember where I'm at. See, I told you, getting tired. All right, future meetings. We've got the WSBA. They're offering their winter board development workshops online. There is also the 2025 Annual Legislative Forum hosted by WSBA and WASA. Will be on Sunday, February 2, 2025 at Little American Cheyenne. The next regular school board meeting will be on Tuesday, February 11, 2025 at Torrington Middle School. Were we going to discuss the governor's thing tomorrow?
We can, we can mention it in the email or in reference to it if you want me to.
Do you have the details of that?
Yeah, I can bring it up.
Or Lorraine?
I can bring it up.
Sorry, we just got an email today, I believe it was, about recognition of school board appreciation by the governor. And if anybody is interested, I think that the event is tomorrow. He gave us plenty of notice. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just, if nobody, all right, so it is tomorrow. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So if anyone from the board is interested in going, check your email. That's just what I'll tell you. If you're interested in participating in that.
And I can just read quick. We look forward to seeing you at the Capitol Building for the proclamation signing of the Wyoming School Board Appreciation Week. A couple of housekeeping reminders. There is free parking around the Capitol Building and down Capitol Avenue. Just trying to see, please have your group wait in the corridor outside the governor's ceremonial conference room where the signing will take place. We will have staff waiting who will escort you in when we are ready for you. There is some seating in the corridor.
All right, thank you. Now we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Just going to share, unfortunately, our screen is not working for me to be able to share this evening, but I am able to share via Zoom and online. But some good news in regards to the average daily membership in comparison to, I'll even, Mr. Harberts is helping me out, so I'm going to be able to kind of show it is a little bit small. I've had this problem before. I will read out that information just so you're aware. The first one there, as you can see, so what we have is the far right column is the month before, the average daily membership. One of the things that you'll see is probably asking, how do we have 23.13 students at Lingo Fort Laramie? What it is the average daily membership. And so this were maybe a situation where a student was a portion of a day or multiple students were a portion of the day. So a student, if they were there all day, is considered 1.0. And so you'll see from the previous month, the December 2024, the December 24 average to the November average. I color code it. Anything in green is indicating a increase from the month before. Also in comparison, you'll see the previous years that are to the left. The positive with this month that you can see with the enrollment is we did increase from the previous month. And scrolling all the way down has the enrollment for the district at 1,585.9 students. This directly also affects our funding. So what we do is we take the average daily membership for the month, and then also it goes into effect for the funding stream for the year. There are states that have a different funding formula and way of articulating that. A lot of states will do a specific day, like in October, they'll pick out a date, October 10th will be the count date. And if you had a bug going through or some other issues where there were a number of students absent, that could directly affect your funding for the next year. Or if you had a situation where an employer in the community unfortunately had a lot of move outs or move ins. In those situations, you can be negatively impacted. Fortunately, Wyoming does an extensive work on the enrollment. It does make it a little bit bigger lift for us in regards to reporting, because if we only had to worry about reporting on one day for the funding stream, right now we worry about every single school day for reporting. So that kind of changes how we do the business of taking attendance. You will notice on this report, 1,585 students, and then it goes down with previous month, 1,581. Previous year, at this time, we were 1,609. So there is a decline in enrollment that is reflected either through graduations and a smaller kindergarten class coming in, which can be sometimes a result of those things. But these are important numbers that I like to report on a monthly basis because it has such a direct impact on our funding. One of the things also, they do a 3-year average in order for the funding stream. And so it's not, if you had a year where there was a significant drop, to mitigate that significant drop, they take that 3-year average. And so as you can see, when you take the previous 3 years, we're still getting into that positive piece of having 1,630 students. And now we're at 1,585. So that is everything I have in regards to the reporting of that information.
All right, with that, we're adjourned.
No, I didn't want to hurt it.
Usually we have a harder table though too.
No, we do not.